What if I told you that in the US, 40% of our energy consumption comes from residential and commercial buildings? Meaning that skylines like the one shown behind me are major contributors to climate change. If you're anything like me, you might think that this is a sector and a problem that needs to be addressed. One of the primary issues is that these buildings already exist, many of them are old, and all of them are aging. And as buildings age, they become less energy efficient, ultimately needing to be renovated or replaced. But if you're a city manager with 20 or more municipal buildings under your jurisdiction, where would you begin? Obviously, cost is a major consideration, but as environmental impacts gain more attention and cities adopt climate-related goals, what if we could develop an environmental metric to prioritize these building projects? In my thesis project, I'm working to develop a tool for decision makers to evaluate the point at which existing underperforming buildings can be replaced with new high-performance construction. This is done using a methodology in computer modeling called life cycle assessment, or LCA. And in an LCA, you take a product or a system and break it down into its most elementary components. And these components are components that you can evaluate the environmental impacts for, ultimately developing an impact profile for the entire system. So I've undertaken this for two different building scenarios. One where you continue to operate a building, and the other where you demolish that building, construct a new building, and then operate this new building. The point at which the environmental impacts from both of these scenarios are the same is what we call the environmental payback period. And the shorter that payback period, the more environmental sense it makes to undertake the project. I've found that for climate-related impacts like carbon emissions, the payback period is relatively short, on the order of a decade or less, meaning that we can recognize environmental benefits in a relatively short period of time. But for other impacts, the payback period is effectively non-existent, which indicates that we need to evaluate a range of impact categories to fully understand what's happening when we undertake these projects, as well as the fact that it might be worthwhile looking at the renovation of buildings as opposed to strictly their demolition and reconstruction. So the bottom line is this. By evaluating buildings holistically in our infrastructure decision-making processes, we can develop environmentally friendly, climate-compatible cities and work to do so in a way that maximizes our tax dollars at work when it comes to alleviating environmental impacts. Thank you.